All of the NBA Finals matchups this month between the Celtics and Mavericks will be on at Walters Sports Bar in the Navy Yard District. Walters is open late, so no closing before the end of the game.
Whether you're a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring podcasts on the Blue Wire Network. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or EE System. If you haven't heard of the EE System yet, then you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Wherever you are across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. Interested in experiencing the EE System technology for yourself? Go to unifiedhealing.com/bluewire to learn more and find a center near you. That's unified, UNIFYD, healing.com/bluewire. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including EE System.
Here's the set of the 0-2, popped up, shallow left, Vargas going out, calling, and the ball drops in! 2 runs will score, confusion on the play.
Long hold, check on the runner, and now the pitch. In the dirt, gets by Adams. He doesn't know where it is. It's toward the first base dugout. Ramirez is going to try to score. The throw to Parker covering the tag. Too late. He scores from second base on a wild pitch.
That game was just sloppy on our part. I mean, they got 5 hits. Blooper we should have caught. A couple of infield hits, but, we made a couple outs on the bases. Just a lot of mistakes.
And welcome to Nats Chat for Sunday, June 2nd, 2024, along with MASNsports.com Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman, who is at Progressive Field in Cleveland. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. We on Saturday in Game 2 of a 3-game series for the Nats at the American League Central leading Cleveland Guardians had some rather quirky things take place, including Nats manager Davey Martinez getting ejected over a really bizarre occurrence. But we did also have another Nats loss, a 3-2 loss, this off the 7-1 loss at the Guardians on Friday night. The Nats for this regular season fall to 26-31. If you would like to sponsor the Nats Chat podcast, we'd love to have you on board. You can sponsor the show for a particular game or series or more. You can put the pod to work for you. Email Tim Shovers at natschatpodcast@gmail.com. Mark, the Nats now over their last 13 losses have totaled just 24 runs. I'm going to repeat that. Last 13 losses, 24 runs. There were some odd things that happened in this game, but bottom line, scoring remains a problem for the Nats, and we certainly have seen that in this series so far.
Well, and that feels like the formula of most of their losses. They're consistently getting very good pitching. There's a few games that get out of hand late, like we saw on Friday night, but for the most part, they are in every one of these games in the 6th, 7th inning, and it's often that they're trailing 3-1, 2-1, 3-2, and they just can't convert there at the end. Every once in a while, they pull it off and they win the game. But certainly more often lately, it feels like they're just not getting that hit that they need late in the game to push across another run or two. And I think, on the one hand, you say, okay, they're playing good teams and they're playing well for the most part, and they have a chance to win almost every game. And that is a sign to me that a team is close to winning. But it also feels like they should be winning more games than this. And this one, I think in particular, feels that way because, yes, if they just hit a little bit more, they win the game. But also, if they just play a clean game in the field in particular, they also probably win this game because the pitching was that good. And ultimately, 2 runs probably should have been enough to win this game.
Yes, clean the defense was not in this game. And while the offense remains the biggest problem, I think in a lot of ways, the bad defense early in the game stands out. So Mitchell Parker was the Nats starting pitcher for this game. He allowed 3 runs in 5 2/3 innings. Now, look, Parker was not blameless here. He issued a good number of walks, and that had not been a problem at all for him. Parker, over his first 8 major league starts, 8 walks. Parker, in just this game on Saturday, 4 walks. He also issued a run-scoring wild pitch. He gave up 4 hits, which were a double and 3 singles. He did record 5 strikeouts. He threw a lot of pitches, but did throw a good number of strikes. 5 2/3 innings, 98 pitches. So a lot of pitches, but 64 strikes versus 34 balls. But Parker in this game was victimized by some really bad defense, including some bad defense by Parker himself. So we had a 2-run Guardians first in which Parker issued back-to-back one-out walks to load the bases. Again, he's not blameless here. But he also gave up 2 singles in this inning. The first single was a one-out Jose Ramirez infield single on a slow roller on which third baseman Nick Senzel did make the barehanded scoop and throw, but not quickly enough. The second single, a 2-out, bases-loaded, 2-run opposite field single by Kyle Manzardo to no man's land in shallow left field on an 0-2 pitch as the ball landed between 3 Nats players in left fielder Eddie Rosario, third baseman Nick Senzel, and shortstop Ildemaro Vargas, as C.J. Abrams was a late scratch from this game due to a shoulder issue. Remember, his shoulder got banged up in Game 1 on Friday night. But there on this play seemed to be big-time confusion over who was calling for the ball. So we had that in the 2-run Guardians first. Then we, in the 1-run Guardians third, had that aforementioned run-scoring wild pitch. Parker issued a 2-out run-scoring wild pitch on which Jose Ramirez scored from second base. We had catcher Riley Adams having trouble locating the ball, and then Parker did a really bad job of covering home plate. He was way too far behind home plate, and then made what I thought was a pretty weak attempt to tag Ramirez. So again, offense was the biggest problem once again, but man, that defense early in the game, not good.
You just outlined it. I mean, there was so much there that they did not have going well for them. Let's run through them all. The infield singles, Nick Senzel, I think there were chances to make better plays on those balls. Jose Ramirez plays the game hard. I want to give him credit. He ran the bases really well. But that's not a guy that should be beating out 2 infield singles. It doesn't feel like that's the case. So starts with that. That to me was the least concerning, though. The pop-up into shallow left field. My read of it was that Vargas thought he had it, and then he pulled up at the last second, ostensibly because he heard somebody else call him off, maybe Rosario and left. We didn't get a chance to talk to those guys afterwards, so I don't know for certain. But the way Davey Martinez explained it was essentially,
my assumption is hear somebody else call it, but he's gone that far. Just catch the ball.
Vargas needs to just go get the ball. He had a beat on it. He was in probably the best position to make the play. He's the shortstop. He can call anybody else off. He just needs to go make the play. This is not a guy who typically commits those kind of mistakes in the field. He's a very clean fielder no matter where he's playing. So you don't want to harp on it too much, but that is absolutely a ball that has to be caught in that situation. And it really hurt them because you're allowing 2 runs to score on a pop-up, essentially. So that one was no good. And the wild pitch, man, Riley Adams was beating himself up for not blocking the pitch to begin with. The ball gets way away from him. He takes a second to even figure out where it is. It almost rolled all the way into the dugout, which if that happens, the run automatically scores. By the time he gets to it, though, I thought he got to it and made the throw in enough time to get Ramirez out. And Mitchell Parker, I think he just never realized that Ramirez was coming all the way around on the play. Probably didn't even cross his mind. And so he's sort of like backing up the play a little bit. But he was in no position to make the tag, as you said. And it's a little thing, but man, that comes back to haunt you. That is a huge moment where they could have at least quashed that, gotten him out at the plate, inning over, everything's going to be all right. And instead, they score what turns out to be the decisive run of the game. So it's been a while since we've talked about the little things, hashtag the little things with the Nats. They've done a pretty good job of this stuff, I think, this year compared to previous years. But in this game, man, they did not do him well. And we haven't even gotten to the base running yet, which is a whole nother story.
Oh, we will be getting to that. Trust me. I find the Nats defensively to be really complex because if you isolate individual guys this season, there are a decent number of Nats players having good defensive seasons. Like if you go by the defensive metrics, C.J. Abrams is having a good defensive season. Jacob Young is having a really good defensive season. Ildemaro Vargas rates well defensively. Trey Lipscomb rates well defensively. But when you look at the overall team defensive metrics, the Nats rate as one of the worst defensive teams in baseball. Entering Saturday for this regular season, the Nats were tied for 22nd out of 30 major league teams in Baseball Info Solutions defensive runs saved at -8, and were tied for number 24 out of 30 major league teams in StatCast outs above average at -12. And there are other advanced metrics I could throw at you in which the Nats do not rate well defensively. So when it comes to, are the Nats a good defensive team, a bad defensive team? I think we're still trying to figure that out. I will say this. It feels like over the last month or so, we have seen more bad than we saw, say, over the first month. There have been some bad defensive performances, and Saturday obviously was glaring.
Yeah, I agree. I think we kind of wondered this at the end of April. Are they maybe not as good in the field as they kind of looked like they were? And maybe now that's coming back to get them, and it's finally starting to actually result in misplays. I agree. I think there's individuals doing well. I want to add Luis Garcia to the list of guys doing well. I think the metrics don't necessarily say he's been as good, but just watching him, the improvement is obvious with him on getting to ground balls that he did not used to get to. So I want to give him credit. He had another great play in this game going up the middle on one. I think what it really boils down to as a team is, number one, I think there are balls hit to the outfield that are not being caught, that probably should be caught. And I don't know if any one individual, but kind of collectively, more so on the corners than in center field. I think there's that. You had another play in this game that Lane Thomas goes back, has the ball in his glove for a split second at the warning track, and then it falls out of it. It's that kind of stuff. I think we've seen some in left field with Winker, and Rosario has been an adventure at times. So I think there's that. I think the catchers, as we've discussed, have had a really tough time in a variety of ways. And the fact that they still give up a lot of stolen bases, which goes on the pitchers as well as the catchers. I think that's when you add it up where the overall numbers aren't looking so great. But not that they need to be a great defensive team, but they need to be better than what we saw in this game. And it's one thing, okay, Lane Thomas doesn't make a catch on a tough play in the outfield. That's one thing. The pop-up that falls in because guys can't communicate, that's the stuff that doesn't work. The, tag play at the plate where the pitcher is nowhere in the right position to make the play. That's the kind of stuff I think that's really troubling. Errors are going to happen, all that kind of stuff, but not taking charge, not being in the right place, I think that's the kind of stuff that eats at you more. And I think it's magnified on a team like this because every game is low scoring and every play does seem to matter in the end.
Yeah, the Lane Thomas play was interesting. Bottom of the sixth, he failed to make a leaping, running, backhanded catch while crossing onto the right field warning track on a leadoff first pitch opposite field double by David Fry. The ball went in and out of Thomas's glove. Now, the Guardians did not score in that inning. Would have been a tough catch, but was a makeable catch. Was another one of those plays, by the way, in which Thomas is approaching an outfield wall and doesn't make the play. And we've seen him struggle in circumstances at which he is at or near an outfield wall.
From groan-worthy dad jokes to patching up skinned knees, your dad is one of a kind. This Father's Day, give him a gift that is guaranteed to take him to his happy place. Omaha Steaks. Order mouth-watering gift packages starting at just $89 when you go to omahasteaks.com and use promo code NATSCHAT at checkout. Each package is backed by their unconditional money-back guarantee. Show your dad the love he deserves with a gift as unforgettable as he is. Visit omahasteaks.com, promo code NATSCHAT at checkout.
Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. It's the most fun and exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats for your shot to win up to 100 times your cash. I made my first $10 deposit and received an instant $10 bonus. And if you have the skills, you can play for a shot of turning your $10 into $1,000. And playoff time is the best time to join the Prize Picks community of over 5 million members who have already downloaded the app. Prize Picks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Download the app today and use the code BLUEWIRE for a first deposit match up to $100. That's a first deposit match of up to $100 when you download the app and use the code BLUEWIRE. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
Hi Nats fans, this is Tim Newmark, DC area composer, longtime Nationals fan, and proud composer of the Nats Chat podcast theme song. If you're enjoying the music and would like to hear more, check out timnewmark.com/streaming or just search for Tim Newmark wherever you listen to music. To find the rest of the song you're hearing now, search for the title Double in the Sun. Go Nats!
Here's your Dylan Cruz update for the game played on Saturday in Harrisburg's 6-0 victory at the Rumble Ponies. Cruz, DH, pair of singles, couple of RBIs, struck out twice as well. Hitting .275 on the season. His OPS is at .807. Now back to the show.
Next one swung on, hit hard to left field. Back on this one is Fry. It's over his head and off the big wall. Garcia races from third and rounds third. He's held up. He slips. Now he's caught between third and home. They're going to get him in a rundown. Third baseman throws to the catcher. Back to Ramirez, who tags him out. And the inning is over. And I'll tell you what happened there. Senzel hit the ball off the wall in left field. Third base coach Ricky Gutierrez was waving Garcia around third and then put up the stop sign. The only problem was Garcia slipped, lost his footing, and when he got up, there was no way for him to get back to third. And the inning is over.
All right, to the boo-boos on the base pass by the Nats in this 3-2 loss at the Guardians on Saturday. So the aforementioned Luis Garcia Jr., starting second baseman, number 4 batter. He went 2 for 4 with 2 singles. Now, one of the singles came in the Nats' 2-run fourth, a one-out first pitch single on a routine fly ball on which Guardians right fielder Jonathan Rodriguez appeared to misjudge the ball and then fell down. And the result was the ball landing behind him, and Garcia was given a single. You have to love the way that errors and singles can be ruled on sometimes. I mean, that's not a single, and yet Garcia got a single. Anyway, good for him. But the base running blunder by Garcia, question mark, or is this more on third base coach Ricky Gutierrez? Top of the second, Garcia leadoff opposite field single to left center field despite having been down to the count at 1.12, but he was thrown out on the base pass to end that top of the second. He had a Nick Senzel 2-out double off the left field fence, got caught in a rundown between third base and home plate due to third base coach Ricky Gutierrez putting up a late stop sign for Garcia. Now, the late stop sign went up. Garcia, slid down. I don't know if he slid to stop himself or if he slid because he slipped. But anyway, he got caught in the rundown and tagged out. So how are we to assess the blame on that play?
So my read of it, I was watching Ricky Gutierrez the entire time, and my angle from the press box here had a perfect view of it. The ball's hit off the wall. Garcia's on first base to start. He's coming around second. And Gutierrez is waving him. The initial sign is, I'm waving you around. And I'm thinking to myself, there's no way he's going to score on this play. It did not seem like there was that much hope for it. And I think along the way, Gutierrez realizes this. And so he then changes to the stop sign. The problem is, I believe he didn't even put up the stop sign until Garcia's foot was touching third base. It was way too late for him to adjust. And so he tries to slam on the brakes, and you saw he slipped as a result. And once he's down, the cutoff throw was coming in that direction. So it's not even like the ball's on the opposite side of the field. It was right there, and so it was a piece of cake for them to tag him out. So even if he doesn't slip, they might still get him out at third base. Maybe not in a rundown, but they might get the throw to third in time to tag him as he dives back to the base. So to me, it's the indecisiveness there. Either you're waving him around all the way, and I don't think that would have worked, but maybe it's a bad throw, something like that. Or you just say all along, hang on, stop sign, we got 2 bases out of this. We're going to have second and third, 2 outs, and Ildemaro Vargas at the plate, a guy who's actually been pretty good in those kind of situations. Let's just go for that instead. And instead, he thought he was going to go for it and then decided way too late to stop him. Now, I think it's the second time maybe this has happened this year with Gutierrez. He's also had a few plays that he aggressively sent somebody and it paid off. So I think in the bigger picture, he's done all right there. I don't think he's been that noticeable, good or bad. But this one in particular was a bad indecision and then ultimately late decision on the stop sign, and it absolutely cost them.
You can't be that late with the sign. I mean, that's putting Garcia in a really tough spot. And then the other big base running blunder by the Nats in this game, Jesse Winker, starting designated hitter and number 6 batter, 1 for 4 with an RBI single, but he also got picked off. Now, give him credit for the RBI single. He and the Nats 2-run fourth had a 2-out opposite field RBI single to left field to cut the Nats deficit to 3-2, but he then got picked off at first base. Wasn't even being held at first base. This was like a set play that was run by the Guardians, and I'm going to keep pounding this drum. The Nats are getting picked off a ton. This is now 7 times in 9 games that a Nats player has gotten picked off. This is inexcusable. This should not be happening, and yet it keeps happening. And this was kind of a unique pickoff, but it was a key pickoff.
Yeah, and he's kind of fallen asleep on the play. And yes, he was not being held on in the traditional method, but Naylor, the first baseman, is kind of right in front of him. and is in a position where he can take the throw and just kind of stick the glove down, and not at the base, but to stick it right where Winker's running from behind, essentially. Correct me if I'm wrong, Winker didn't dive back into the base. He went back in on his feet. Again, not ever expecting this was going to happen. And that's why Naylor was able to make the tag, because it was up high, not diving down. So it's falling asleep in the moment, not recognizing that even though he's not holding you on in the traditional manner, that doesn't mean he can't still get you. No reason for that to happen. And again, little things that a team like this, the way they're going, where they're pitching well, but they're not hitting, and every base runner matters for this team right now. You simply cannot afford to give away outs. If you're thrown out trying to steal, if you're thrown out trying to take an extra base, you understand that a little more. That's their style. That's their aggressiveness. But the pickoffs, the indecision by base coaches, that kind of stuff just doesn't work. Not for this team, not the way they're built right now.
And let's be honest, when it comes to advanced scouting of the Nats, you've got to think that opposing teams are viewing the Nats as what we like to call easy marks on the base pass. You know, if you're doing an honest, objective, and thorough advanced scouting report on the Nats, and you see all of these guys get picked off and these guys so frequently get thrown out, the Nats are viewed as easy marks, guys you can get out on the base pass. And, you know, we're seeing that here lately. All right, so we had all of that with the fielding and the base running, and then there was the Davey Martinez ejection. Again, a lot of oddities, a lot of quirky occurrences in this game. So Jacob Young, starting center fielder, number one batter, with again Abrams a late scratch. Young went 0 for 3, exited the game due to the swelling of his right hand. Why was his right hand swelling? Well, top of the third, he struck out swinging for the third out, but it was that swing that was the source of some controversy. What appeared to happen was that Young swung, fouled off the pitch, and essentially was hit by the pitch at the same time.
Now the 1-2. Look out. That pitch almost hit Young. He swings at it and fouls it. No, he's called out. They say he didn't hit the ball, and Jacob Young's saying it's a foul ball.
What the home plate umpire Malachi Moore ruled was that Young swung, missed the pitch, and was hit by the pitch. And the way this works is a swing supersedes a hit by pitch. The thing is, the ball went toward the first base dugout. That would not have happened had the ball just hit Young but not his bat. It obviously went off the bat. If the ball hits flesh or bone, it's not going to go, flying toward a dugout, or at least, go a good way toward a dugout. Davey Martinez was not happy about this. He argued the call vociferously, got nowhere, and got ejected. So there was a lot to take in with all of this. What did you make of what happened?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed obvious that the ball hit the bat. As you said, the distance that it went. But even beyond that, think about this. If you're Jacob Young and you just got hit by a pitch in the hand, can you fake it that well? Like, you're going to react in the moment. Ow, that hurt. A pitch hit me on my hand. It would be really hard to pull that off without the umpire and everybody kind of recognizing it. So it seemed clear that that's what happened. Now, he was pretty upset. He kept insisting, I fouled it off. And Moore is saying to him, you swung, but you swung. And Jacob Young is trying to saying, I know I swung. I'm not arguing that, but it hit the bat. It's a foul ball. I think Davey, worried that Jacob Young was about to be ejected, goes out there and just takes over himself and put on quite the show, as we saw. When Davey does get ejected, he gets his money's worth. There are very few calm ejections, or he just takes it and heads back to the dugout. He's going to let him, know what he thinks. Now, as this is playing out, I'm thinking to myself, well, you can review this. And I'm remembering a key moment in the wild card game back in 2019, one that kind of got the rally going. Michael A. Taylor, very similar situation. And it's a question of, did the pitch hit the bat or did it hit his hand? And it was reviewed, and it was a long review before they finally upheld the call that he was hit by the pitch, allowing him to take first. And that kind of got the whole rally going. And I'm thinking to myself, why aren't you doing that here? Well, it is a reviewable play if you're judging foul ball versus hit by pitch. But apparently, because Moore said that he swung the bat, as you said, that supersedes everything else, and that's no longer a reviewable play once it's been determined that he swung. That seems to me to be a loophole and a kind of a crazy thing, because you're essentially reviewing the exact same thing, whether he swung or not. Did the ball hit the bat? did the ball hit the batter? And that ultimately, I think, cost the Nats, because if you do review that, I think it would have been clear that it did indeed hit the bat. So really weird play, cost them, of course, and just another one of those that it feels like whenever there's some kind of controversy like that, whenever there's a question of what exactly happened and was the rule applied properly, it feels like way more often than not the Nats are on the wrong end of these calls. I don't know if it's just we remember the ones they get screwed on, but it doesn't feel like they get the breaks, the benefit of the doubt, usually when it comes to something like that. Am I wrong?
No, well, especially if your name is Trey Turner. You're definitely not wrong. With the replay aspect of this is why I, for years, have subscribed to the Bill Belichick school of thought with replay. Belichick years ago said everything should be reviewable. If you're going to have replay, you shouldn't have, well, this is reviewable, but in this case, that's actually not reviewable. It gets way too ticky-tack. It gets way too complex and confusing. And you lose logic because a basic circumstance like this could have been fixed with replay, but you couldn't challenge this specific play. Everything should be reviewable. If you're going to have replay, have it, use it, and make that which is ruled wrong, ruled right. Malachi Moore, it's worth pointing out, last season was his first full-time season in the majors, so he is a relatively inexperienced major league umpire. I also wondered this as I was watching Davey, and Davey did let Moore have it. He kicked at the dirt at one point after he got tossed.
And nose to nose. And now he's going toward home plate, and he kicks some dirt over home plate.
Do you think Davey got himself tossed on purpose, knowing that the Nats had just gotten screwed? They're down 2-0. This seems like another sleepy offensive performance that the Nats are in the midst of. Davey's not a dummy. He knows that there's a line that you can and cannot cross when it comes to getting tossed. He comes out. He pretty early in the conversation with Moore gets tossed. It felt like Davey came out and didn't just walk up to the line, did a somersault over the line and then really got his money's worth. And it felt to me that maybe Davey was doing something on purpose, trying to fire up his team and get tossed with a purpose.
I think so, yeah. I think he sensed just the way things were going. It was the kind of game, even early on, you could tell they weren't real thrilled with the umpiring. There were some questionable strike calls, maybe even the night before, not feeling great about some things. And you put that all together and it builds up to that moment. And yeah, sometimes you do need to inject a little life in your dugout. And I think there was some of that was going on. I think also some of it was trying to take the attention away from Jacob Young, not wanting him to get tossed. That's the last thing they needed right now, although he ended up leaving the game with the hand issue, which we're not sure. It doesn't sound like he got hurt because of that pitch, because that would indicate that he was hit by the pitch. It is the same hand and it's right on the knuckles. It sounds like maybe he had been dealing with this in the past from a previous hit by pitch. It hadn't bothered him in a while. He made a throw to third base later in the game and looked down and realized his hand was swollen, and that's when he brought it up. They're going to check on him. We'll see how he is for Sunday. Just another weird aspect to a really weird game.
Interesting. So he did not hurt the hand on that play. I think we all just kind of assumed that that's how he hurt the hand.
On the hit by pitch or on the throw? You're talking
on the
about?
hit by pitch.
I don't know if that's him not wanting to admit that, because if you say that, then you're acknowledging you were hit by the pitch and it wasn't a foul ball. It sounded like perhaps he had dealt with something in the past with that hand. It had gotten better, and then for whatever reason, it acted up and swelled up on him during this game. Now, maybe the hit by pitch / foul ball, the vibration of it, whatever it was, maybe that exacerbated it and brought it back again. But he did say that he went to make that throw to third later in the game, and it was a really high offline throw that he realized, well, I didn't have a good grip on that. And he looked down at his hand and it was swollen. And that's when he spoke up about it. So a little bit of a mystery there. Maybe we'll find out more on Sunday about it. I don't know if this is gamesmanship of not wanting to admit that, yeah, he actually was hit by the pitch, or if there really was an issue that had been around longer than that.
Well, I'll say this about Jacob Young. We talked about the Nats' bad defense. Young made a terrific catch in this game. Bottom of the sixth, 1 out, runner on third. Nats down 3-2. Jacob Young in shallow center field catches a fly ball off the bat of Kyle Manzardo for the second out. Young came racing toward the infield to make what was close to being a basket catch. But like, that is a perfect example of the great speed of Jacob Young and what that can mean. We mentioned he is having a very good defensive season. And unlike on the play that landed between Rosario and Senzel and Vargas, here was Jacob Young taking charge, taking command, running in seemingly at 100 miles an hour and making a really impressive catch.
So the infield is in, so none of them had a chance. That should be caught by an infielder normally, but they weren't in a position to do that. The runner is on third, and he had to be 120 feet that he covered just to get there and then prevent the run from scoring. And that was a huge moment because it's a 3-2 game, and it kept it at 3-2. What he has done, the runs he has saved for them, both coming in, and we've seen him go back on balls. If he is hurt, and you hope that he's not, if he is hurt, that's going to cost them. You saw what a kind of fiasco it was to try to replace him in center field when he came out of the game. Initially, they put Rosario in center and Joey Gallo in left. And then when that inning was over, they decided, no, you know what? We'd rather have Lane Thomas in center. Rosario, you go play right. Eddie Rosario ends up playing all three outfield positions during the course of the game. And I do wonder if they're at all unsure about Young's status and if there might be a need to look at the IL, if they might go make sure they have somebody fly in from Rochester like an Alex Call, because they don't really have a backup center fielder at the moment. And oh, by the way, the guy who would have been their backup center fielder was in the news because he's now officially no longer part of the organization.
Yes, Victor Robles, unconditional release waivers. The Nats made that announcement on Saturday afternoon. We got an email on the podcast a few shows ago asking this very question. If Jacob Young gets hurt, who now is the center fielder? I did want to ask this. So whenever James Wood does get called up, do you know which outfield spot they primarily envision him playing at the major league level? Because he is playing some center field in the minors. Do you think they keep Young in center and have Wood play, say, left field? We know they like Lane Thomas in right field. Do you still put Wood in right field? What do you think they're thinking with James Wood when they call him up?
I've really been wondering this for a while, and I think it just kind of depends on what the state of things is at the moment that he's called up. If it happens sometime soon, given what the current arrangement is, I would think he's in left because I think Jacob Young has earned the right to be the center fielder. Now, if it's a little later on, maybe Young starts struggling and, he's not hitting enough to stay in the lineup. And so you could put him there. There's the whole issue of Rosario and Winker. Are you trying to get them more playing time leading into the trade deadline to boost their value? There's a lot of factors to consider there. In the long run, James Wood might be the center fielder, although Dylan Cruz could be the center fielder as well. But right now, I think what Jacob Young has done, he's earned the right to stay there until he's not performing well enough. And so I think if it was right now, you'd put James Wood in left and make Jacob Young play his way out of the position.
So the Nats in this game, just 6 hits, a double and 5 singles, just 2 walks, 1 for 3 with runners in scoring position. The double did come from Nick Senzel. He is the Nats starting third baseman and number 7 batter, 2 for 3 with a double and a single. The Nats bullpen was good in this game. Remember, was not good in the 7-1 loss on Friday night, but the Nats bullpen in this game just fine. 2 relievers combining for 2 1/3 scoreless innings. Dylan Floro faced 3 batters, got 2 outs, and Derek Law tossed 1 2/3 scoreless and hitless innings, although he did issue a walk, a hit by pitch, and 2 wild pitches. Quite a few wild pitches by Nats pitchers in this game.
Tim Shover's here to tell you about Game Time. This summer at Jiffy Lube Live, acts include Neil Young, Hank Williams Jr., and Chris Stapleton. If you're interested in finding tickets to any of these shows, make sure to check out the Game Time app. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code NATSCHAT for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code NATSCHAT for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
VA's Home Loan Guarantee made home buying a seamless, easy process. I closed in 30 days with no down payment.
Get what you earned. Visit choose.va.gov. Not all veterans are eligible for the type or amount of benefits mentioned here.
Here's the pitch. Swinging a bouncer right side toward the hole. Getting to it is Arias. Short throw in time, and the game is over. 3 ground ball outs for Emmanuel Clase, recording his 18th save in 21 tries. And the Guardians celebrate their 39th win of the year, and they have won this series, having taken the first 2 from the Nationals.
There was so much happening with this game, it almost becomes an afterthought, but of course this is significant. C.J. Abrams was a late scratch for this game off hurting a shoulder, I guess what would be his left shoulder, in that diving attempt at the Tyler Freeman grounder that went off Nick Senzel in another weird play, that play coming on Friday night. That was an RBI infield single by Freeman. So do we know anything specific about Abrams and how he's doing and whether this is concerning or not?
So he was in the lineup initially. I remember we thought at first that there was more of a head issue, that he kind of slammed his face and was he a little dazed from that. So he was in the lineup, but went into the cage during BP and I guess said that he was noticing on his swings that his shoulder was bothering him. I actually saw him on the field after the announcement was made. I was down there to do the pregame show and saw him and asked him how it was going. And before we even knew what it was, that he was scratched for, and he told me that it was the shoulder that he had jammed it. He didn't sound particularly worried by it. You would hope that on Sunday he is good to go, but that's another reason that I'm thinking to myself, they may need to have some insurance on hand just in case. You can't play 2 men down, 2 starters down, especially when one of your bench guys never plays anyways. That's a whole nother story with Nasim Nunez. I think the hope would be that he's all right, and they're just waiting now on Jacob Young to see if his hand is okay. But I would not be surprised if they felt the need to have somebody on standby, just in case, because you do not want to go into the series finale and be 2 guys down.
And then just to put a bow on the Victor Robles thing. So like I said, the Nats on Saturday afternoon announced having requested unconditional release waivers on Victor Robles. It was this past Memorial Day, Monday afternoon, that the Nats announced having designated Robles for assignment. So I think that the confusion here is, there's this presumption of you DFA a guy and he goes on waivers, but I guess is now when he actually enters into the waiver process?
Yeah, and I think that I got confused on that as well. I typically think, that happens right away, and it's 72 hours later. In this case, I guess you don't have to do it immediately. You are allowed 5 days to try to trade a guy. And so maybe in some cases you DFA somebody and you know there's not going to be any kind of trade market. In this case, you thought, well, maybe there's a chance. So I guess they put calls out there. They wanted to see if there's anything. In the end, there wasn't, or at least nothing that they felt was worth it. And so once those 5 days were up, now you have that decision to make, which is essentially, are we going to place him on outright waivers, which means he could still be claimed by somebody else, but if he goes unclaimed, we're going to outright him to AAA and he stays in the organization, just no longer on the 40-man roster. Or in this case, irrevocable release waivers, which is essentially the Nationals saying right now, we are not retaining him. He goes on waivers, somebody could claim him, but if he passes through, he's going to be released. He's no longer in the organization. Now, if you're another team and you know that that's the case, if you claim him off waivers, you're paying his salary for the rest of the season. If you already know the Nats aren't going to keep him, I don't know how worried you are about that happening, and so you let him pass, and after that, you could sign him again to a major league minimum deal. And now the Nats are on the hook for the bulk of his $2.6 million he's owed. So I think we all know where this is headed. I don't expect him to be claimed by anybody, but he now does have to go through that process. Once he's through that, he will officially be released, become a free agent, and then he's free to sign with whoever he wants. But regardless, that question that we all had, could he go to AAA? Could he stay in the organization? No, this is the Nationals saying, we are not going to do that. We are going to release you if you are not claimed off waivers, and thus ends a very long tenure with the organization, 11 years, longest of anyone who had been with the organization.
You know, it's a funny deal because you could argue that a guy like Robles in some ways is an organizational win. You sign him so young, you develop him to where he becomes this highly regarded prospect, and you do get at least a very good 2019 season out of him. But of course, it's so hard to view this as an organizational win because we thought that this guy could be a franchise-type outfielder for years to come, and you only ended up getting the one good season out of him. It really is odd. There really isn't like a good comp for this in terms of like, well, this same thing kind of happened with another Nats player. Like, not really. This is very rare that a guy is well-regarded, highly touted, bursts onto the scene, has a good rookie season, and then that's it. It all kind of goes away. There are guys who fade as time goes on, but they're good for multiple seasons. This guy was like literally good for one season, he was kind of sort of good in, I guess it was 2022, but even that was not like peak Robles, and he still was not good offensively that season. And now he's going to be gone from the organization, and I think it's going to be fascinating to see what happens with him moving forward. Does another team get production out of him, or is this just who he now is, a shell of what he was 5 years ago?
Yeah, the closest comp, and they always come up side by side, is Michael A. Taylor, but even that was different in that he wasn't as highly regarded as Robles all along. He did have one really good year, but then also was always good defensively. It was just a question of that he wasn't able to hit for them consistently. And then they gave up on him sooner, and he has bounced around. But I mean, he's won Gold Gloves now. He's playing a good center field for the Pirates, although he's not hitting anymore for them. Robles was much more to the extremes, I think, in who he was as a player. And I've got to believe another organization is going to give him a shot, especially at the major league minimum, knowing what he could, in theory, do for you. But also just having watched him enough, I hope he does get it because I like the guy and I think he's a better player than we saw here. But I don't know. You get to a certain point, and if it does happen, it really was a change of scenery that made the difference because I don't think it was ever going to happen here based on what we'd seen the last few years.
Game 3 for the Nats at the Guardians Sunday afternoon at 1:40. Jake Irvin will be the Nats starting pitcher as the Nats try to avoid a 3-game sweep. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can email the podcast, natschatpodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on our website as well, natschatpodcast.com, at which you can purchase a Nats Chat Podcast t-shirt. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. Nats Chat is on the radio Sunday morning 9 to 10 on ESPN Richmond, which is 106.1 FM in the Richmond, Virginia area, and Sunday morning 9 to 10 on Priority Sports Radio 94.1 in the Virginia Beach area. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
Left-hander to that stutter and finally stop. Crossfire delivery, the kick and the pitch. Inside, he hit him with it. And Taylor took one. He doesn't wear any protective armor. He'll go down to first base. That had to hurt.
Everyone is talking about magnesium. It's all you hear about. But why? What do we know about magnesium? Well, magnesium is the #1 mineral that 75% of Americans are deficient in. If you are a woman over 35, magnesium will help you rediscover balance, energy, and vitality. Magnesium supports more than 300 enzymatic reactions in your body, including those involved in hormonal balance. From functional medicine doctors to mental well-being and female hormone experts, we all know that magnesium is the one mineral to improve all aspects of well-being and health. But which one? Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers, the trusted choice recommended by leading experts with 7 best-absorbed forms of magnesium to ensure your body receives the support it needs for overall well-being. Go to bioptimizers.com/balance today and use code BALANCE10 for 10% off. Support your journey to wellness at bioptimizers.com/balance. Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers, your foundation to optimal health and vitality.